Hi, I'm Osprix, and this is Chaos Fissure, a cast-and-go warlock that is both tanky and has high damage without the need for any uniques, making this a perfect cycle starter. The build focuses on two skills, Chthonic Fissure and Chaos Bolts, for applying and proliferating curses, causing heavy amounts of damage over time in a large area, while generating a ton of ward on hit. It also stacks necrotic resistance as high as possible for some great offensive and defensive benefits. Check the description below for a link to the comprehensive written guide on Last Epoch tools that includes a full loot filter that takes you from level 1 to 100. We have two main skills in the build, Chaos Bolts and Chthonic Fissure. Chthonic Fissure curses with Torment on hit with its spirits and has a chance to cast Chaos Bolts instead whenever it would cast a spirit. Chaos Bolts also has a chance to recast itself when hitting a cursed target. This combo allows us to simply cast Chthonic Fissure and walk away, while Chaos Bolts continuously re-triggers itself from all of the targets that Chthonic Fissure has cursed. This creates an extremely large area of effect that is capable of clearing well off-screen. Chthonic Fissure applies Torment on hit with spirits, which is being greatly multiplied by our total necrotic resistance. This makes Torment one of, if not our highest source of damage. This is one of the reasons why we want to stack necrotic resistance as high as possible. Chaos Bolts applies Damned on hit, a damage over time debuff that is not a curse, which can stack infinitely. With such a high chance to apply Damned in our build, this allows Damned to compete with Torment for damage quite well. It also refreshes the durations of all of our curses on hit, so we don't have to recast any of them during bosses. Spirit Plague is an indispensable tool in this build, and I would even go as far as to consider it a third main skill. Its purpose is to generate ward whenever the cursed target is hit, most likely by Chaos Bolts, then spreads to more targets. This complements the chaining and spreading nature of Chaos Bolts quite well, and generates much more ward than you would initially expect. We also have it set to cast in an area for more initial affected targets. Bone Curse is converted entirely to necrotic damage, and is used to apply more damage over time when an affected target is hit. It also has a chance for the target to explode when it's killed, creating a chain reaction of explosions for great clear. It applies Marked on Death on affected targets, substantially reducing their resistances. Bone Curse is also being cast automatically from Chaos Bolts, so we don't put Bone Curse in our action bar. Instead, we use a non-spec transplant for movement. Finally, we have Wandering Spirits. We really only use this skill during bosses to increase the speed in which Damned is applied, as well as shredding necrotic resistance for even more damage. In the Acolyte tree, we go straight across the bottom row as it's full of extremely useful passives. We get 5 points of Forbidden Knowledge for necrotic resistance, 10 points of Mania of Mortality for some ward on kill, and 5 points of Unnatural Preservation for more necrotic resistance and ward retention. Next we get 5 points of Survival of the Cruel and Lich. This is strictly better than Spirit Leech and Warlock, and we get it earlier, so this is a no-brainer. At the beginning of Warlock, we grab 5 points of each Chaos Flames and Spiteful Decay. This gives us Spiteful Decay's threshold bonus for a great more multiplier. Next is 5 points of Ward of Malevolence for some really great ward bonuses, and 3 points of Imperishable for its threshold bonus. This is the second reason we stack necrotic resistance, as it gives us a 1-to-1 added ward decay threshold bonus. We get 1 point of Harrowing Armor and 1 more point of Chaos Flames to allow us to get 5 points in Dark Protections, unlocking the less damage taken threshold bonus. We end up applying a whole 5 curses, so at maximum efficiency this reduces our damage taken by 10%. Next up is another 5 point threshold bonus from Chains of Ruin. This gives us some really useful crowd control. 5 points in Encroaching Darkness gives us access to the Anguish Curse, which is applied on targets whenever we manually cast a spell with the curse tag, so this will be applied by casting Chthonic Fissure and Spirit Plague. Next is 5 points of Grasping Damnation to increase our crowd control efficiency, 5 points of Fleeting Crone to really speed us up when farming monoliths, and 5 points in Chaotic Strikes to give our Chaos Bolts a decent chance to deal double damage on hit. At the end of the tree, we get all of the threshold bonuses from Dustbringer, from much more boss damage from Anguish, a Cursed Seer for a great immediate chunk of ward when we drop to low health, and Aspect of Death for a huge, if short-lived, damage multiplier when killing packs of enemies. Lastly, we get 5 points of Vessel of Chaos for another more multiplier, and back to Acolyte for 6 points in Eye of Damnation for some increased chance to apply Damned. The rest of our points will be going into maxing out the nodes we've already put points into, so please refer to the written guide for those. Ward Decay Threshold is an extremely important stat on this build, as it functions as health but better, and it's extremely easy for us to regenerate. As such, our endgame bases almost exclusively consist of gear that provides us with that stat. Necropolis Helm, Necropolis Plate, Arcane Boots, and Ivory Ring all provide Ward Decay Threshold, with Ivory Ring pulling double duty by also providing hefty necrotic resistance, our main scaling stat. Our Opulent Focus and Putrid Souls gives us some meaningful ward per second, effectively functioning as health regen within our Ward Decay threshold. Ward retention from the Opulent Focus is not to be underestimated either. As we struggle to hit resistance caps because of our heavy focus on necrotic resistance, I've opted for Spider Silk Sash, Crusader Gauntlets, and Putrid Souls. If you're somehow able to overcap all of your resists to 100% without these, please consider using Chain Belt, Outcast Gloves, and Caged Souls. Luckily, Bone Amulet provides both necrotic resistance and physical resistance, so it was kind of a no-brainer. As for our weapon, Profane Wand is the best choice as it implicitly increases all of our damaging curses, namely Torment. The main stat we're looking for on all gear except for our wand is necrotic resistance, as it will be giving us the bulk of our defense via Ward Decay Threshold and damage via multiplying Torment. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward in terms of scaling damage. We look for necrotic damage, damage over time, and spell damage on most gear, and of course necrotic penetration on our amulet, and hybrid necrotic penetration on our wand. Wherever we can't get those affixes, we look for cast speed and intelligence instead. Chance to apply Damned on hit is exclusive on helmets and body armor for acolytes, so this is an extremely high value affix. The same thing goes for ward per second, though it's also available on our catalyst. As mentioned before, Ward Decay Threshold is extremely important for us, so one of the best blessings we can get is Greed of Darkness from the Black Sun. Similarly, Grace of Water from Ending the Storm is an amazing blessing, though I personally prefer going for Grand Resonance of the Sea once I have access to Empowered Monoliths. Either are great choices in my opinion. While you might think at first that Despair of Flesh or Dream of a Terror are the blessings we want from Reign of Dragons, I actually believe Resolve of Humanity, especially the Grand version, is infinitely more helpful due to our natural resistance deficit. I can't overstate enough how difficult it is to actually cap our non-necrotic resistances on this build. From Age of Winter we get Resolve of Grail, because it's the only useful blessing from this timeline for us. Finally, from Spirits of Fire we get Promise of Death, letting us stack Shred necrotic resistance even higher. As for the other blessings, get whatever you need for finding the appropriate gear and shards. Before approaching monoliths, you want to make sure you have a decent opulent focus and to make sure you have necrotic resistance on all applicable gear. This way our defensive and offensive scaling should be good enough to start farming. Fully capping resistances other than necrotic is going to be difficult, so don't worry about that just yet. Having about 40 to 50% on all other resists should be fine enough for now. There are a couple stats I think you should meet before going into empowered monoliths. The first being having about 1.5 thousand resting ward, the amount of ward you have while not doing anything, and to have at least 75% all resists. Again, it's going to be extremely difficult to hit 100% all res in order to nullify Marked for Death, so you should aim for at least 80% by level 90 when you're doing higher than 100 corruption in monoliths. Finalizing the build at level 90 plus consists of getting your necrotic resistance to at least 700%. This is what I consider to be the sweet spot for damage and ward. You also want about 150 to 300% ward retention if you can manage it, and to be at about 1.8 to 2k resting ward. A fantastic and fairly easy to get unique upgrade is the Bone Clamor Barbute. It grants added ward generation based on your total necrotic resistance, so it fits perfectly within our playstyle. It will effectively double your resting ward, and the ward generation will make you feel next to immortal. That's the entirety of the Chaos Fissure Warlock. Again, please see the description for a link to the comprehensive written guide. Please leave a like and subscribe if you like the builds, as I have many more on the chopping block.
This world ends. Do you deny it? My shadow will cover this world once more. changes anything. This world is already dead.